Madam President, I rise today to speak about the historical and unprecedented wildfires that burned through southwest Kansas last week. We had fires in 21 of our Kansas counties, roughly one-fifth of our state. High winds and dry conditions caused fires of the highest classification to blaze across central and western Kansas, some 30 to 40 feet high, burning more than 700,000 acres of land, making this the largest wildfire in our state's history. The Kansas Division of Emergency Management has said it could take weeks to determine the full extent of devastation from the fires. Clark County, Kansas officials, that's the county that was the hardest hit, estimate a devastating loss of anywhere from 3,000 to 9,000 head of cattle. That's just one county. As I indicated, Clark County was the hardest hit by the wind-blown fires, with over 85% of the land in the county consumed by these prairie fires. This is hundreds of thousands of acres in one county, over 700,000 in regards to our state. On Friday, I drove south from Dodge City, Kansas, through range and ranch land I didn't even recognize. What used to be gently rolling prairie dotted with herds of cattle and crisscrossed by fencing is now reduced to blackened dust. Friends of mine lost their ranch when a 40-foot wall of fire roared out of the valley over the bluff and burned out their operation. We have unmanageable damage to land and property, but also heart-wrenching scenes of cattle and wildlife burned, wounded, and wandering. Many Kansans lost everything. According to Sheriff John Catron of Clark County, 31 houses and over 440,000 acres were burned there. We have longtime friends there, John and Carol Swayze. We've known them for years. John said to me with tears in his eyes, "Pat, it took me 43 years to build up this operation, and it took about an hour to take it all down." Riding with Sheriff Catron, we were assessing the town of Ashland, where a volunteer firefighting force managed to save the town when it became surrounded in flames. Some volunteers were fighting fires elsewhere in the area and learned their own homes have been engulfed and lost. I met with people, brave people, in the towns of Englewood and Ashland, Kansas, in the heart of Clark County, who had just come through frightening experiences fighting the unpredictable and unstoppable fires. Some were out driving cattle away from the fires and had become separated from loved ones. When the flames turned, they were left to pray for their safety. Kayleen Scott with the High Plains Journal calls it the worst day of her life. And she wrote a courageous and honest account of the day. I read her words now. "I think I had them going the right way. And then the wind switched. Now I just don't know. When I heard the crack in my husband's voice yesterday afternoon, I knew it was bad. He's normally the calm, cool, and collected one. A family friend alerted him to the fire in Clark County, very near the Scott farm, after we'd returned home from burying my dad yesterday, coming back from a funeral. When they said the closest neighbor was being evacuated, he went as quickly as he could, fearing for the cattle herd he worked for the last 5 years to build following the death of his own dad. I stayed behind with the boys at our house. That's 40 miles away. When the wind switched at my house from southwest to the north, I began to worry even more, and I called him. At this point, he was waiting out the fire and smoke in the wheat field, helplessly watching the house and the barn burn. I wanted to be at the farm so bad, but there wasn't much that could be done. When he made it home unscathed, I was pretty happy, but sad at the same time, knowing there was nothing we could do to fix what it took Mother Nature mere minutes to destroy. 52 cows are on the farm, with about half or three-fourths of them with young calves. Most are accounted for. All the grass is gone, as is the hay stockpile. He went and hauled water to the cows this morning, and some are scorched and others have udders with burns. One cow is bawling for a missing calf. Those poor mamas was my text reply to him as of this morning. I made my way early this afternoon to see the farm, or what's left of it, with my own eyes. As bad as I wanted to be down there, a piece of me dreaded the drive. The closer I got to the farm, the worse it got. Blowing dirt, darkening skies because of the dust and the awful winds. I pulled in the drive like I'd done 100 times. Nearly 20 years I have been part of the family, and I had to stop my vehicle. The tears came, and the heartbreak overwhelmed me. I thought of the old white farmhouse with a wonderful front porch where my husband spent a large majority of his childhood. My fondest memory is when we'd stop and see my husband's Grandma Pauline. She always had something sweet to eat and a cold drink at the kitchen table. The home had been around for 100 years and still had a large portion of the family's mementos in it. It was reduced to ashes and rubble. All that is standing is the chimney. I couldn't see the barn around the trees, but I again had to stop and sit when I pulled around the corner. The barn, the old barn with its red siding. I remember when my father-in-law had it painted and how proud he was because it looked so good. I remember when he laid the brick in front of the tack room and built a new door for it. My boys explored every inch of it when we worked calves last fall. You could almost hear the horses munching in the stalls decades ago when you stood in the center alley. Now it's just a charred pile of tin.